The grill hissed as flames curled up around the edges of the burgers, fat dripping and popping like tiny fireworks. Smoke rose in lazy spirals, carrying the smell of pepper, garlic, and something sweet I couldn't quite name. It was one of those quiet weekend afternoons where time felt slower, stretched thin by heat and the hum of distant lawnmowers. I had music playing softly from my phone on the patio table, an old playlist I only used when I wanted to pretend life was simpler than it actually was. I was halfway through flipping a burger when I felt it, that unmistakable sensation of being watched. Not in a creepy way, just a gentle pull at the back of my awareness. I glanced toward the fence separating my yard from the one next door. She was there. My neighbor stood on her side of the fence, one elbow resting casually on the wooden slats, the other hand holding a glass that caught the sunlight. She wore a loose summer dress, the kind that moved easily in the breeze, and her hair was pulled back in a way that looked effortless but probably wasn't. She smiled when our eyes met, not the polite, neighborly smile we'd exchanged dozens of times before, but something warmer, something that lingered. "Smells good," she said. "Thanks," I replied, suddenly aware of how rumpled my t-shirt was, how my hair probably smelled like smoke. "Trying not to burn dinner." She laughed softly, a sound that surprised me with how familiar it felt. We'd lived next to each other for nearly a year, yet our interactions had been limited to passing greetings, the occasional comment about the weather, or a brief exchange when one of us forgot to roll the trash bin back in. I knew her name, Lena, from the mailbox. She knew mine. That was about it. She took a sip of her drink, eyes still on me, then tilted her head slightly, as if considering something. The moment stretched just a beat too long. "I really hope you're not married," she said. The words slipped out easily, almost playfully, but they landed with weight. My hand froze on the spatula. For a split second, I wondered if I'd misheard her, if the sizzle of the grill had distorted the sound. But the look on her face told me I hadn't imagined it. I let out a short laugh, more reflex than humor. "Wow," I said. "That's direct." She smiled wider, unashamed. "Life's too short not to be." I turned back to the grill, buying myself a moment. My heart had started racing, thudding hard enough that I was sure she could hear it over the crackle of flames. No one had flirted with me like that in a long time, certainly not someone who lived 20 feet away. "Well," I said slowly, flipping the burger with more force than necessary, "you don't have to worry. I'm not married." I glanced over my shoulder in time to see the relief flicker across her face. It was subtle, gone almost as quickly as it appeared, but it was there. Something in my chest loosened in response. "Good," she said softly. "I was hoping you'd say that." There it was again, that charged pause. The air between us felt thicker, heavier, as if the afternoon heat had suddenly doubled. I realized how little I actually knew about her. Where she worked. Whether she lived alone. What had made her bold enough to say something like that to a neighbor she barely spoke to? "I'm Lena," she added, as if we were just now properly meeting. "I know," I said. "Mailbox gives it away." She laughed, shaking her head. "Right. Well, still. Nice to actually talk to you." We fell into conversation after that, tentative at first, then easier. She asked about the grill, about whether I always cooked outside when the weather was decent. I told her it was my way of pretending I had my life together. She shared that she'd moved in after a messy breakup, that the house had been meant to be temporary but had somehow turned into home. As she spoke, I found myself noticing small details, the way she gestured with her hands, the faint crease that appeared between her brows when she talked about something serious, the ease with which she held eye contact. It struck me how strange it was that someone like her had been living next door all this time, just out of reach, separated by a fence and a lack of courage. "Do you do this often?" she asked, nodding toward the grill. "Cook?" I said. "No," she replied, smiling. "Have impromptu conversations with neighbors." "First time," I admitted. "Guess I've been missing out." She raised her glass slightly, as if in agreement. "Me too." A sudden flare-up on the grill snapped me back to the task at hand. I cursed under my breath, quickly adjusting the heat. When I looked back up, she was watching me with an amused expression. "Need help?" she asked. I think I've got it under control, I said. But thanks. She hesitated, then glanced back toward her house. Well, I should probably let you finish dinner. There was something in her tone that suggested she didn't really want to leave. The realization gave me a small, unexpected thrill. You're welcome to join, I said before I could overthink it. I've probably made too much food anyway. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. Are you inviting me over? I am, I said. No pressure. She smiled, that same warm, lingering smile from before. Maybe another time. But, thank you. She stepped back from the fence, pausing for a moment as if to say something else. Then she nodded, turned, and walked back toward her house. I watched until she disappeared inside, the door closing softly behind her. For a long moment, I just stood there, spatula in hand, the grill forgotten. My yard felt different now, as if something invisible had shifted. The fence that had always seemed like a boundary suddenly felt more like a suggestion. As I finished cooking, my mind replayed the conversation over and over. The way she'd said those words. The look in her eyes when I told her I wasn't married. It had been so long since anyone had looked at me like that, with interest, with hope. I carried the food inside, but I barely tasted it when I sat down to eat. My thoughts drifted instead to the porch light next door, already glowing faintly as evening approached. I wondered if she was thinking about me too, if that brief exchange meant as much to her as it had to me. After dinner, I stepped back outside to clean up the grill. The sky was painted in soft shades of orange and pink, the air cooler now, more forgiving. I leaned against the patio railing, looking toward her house, half expecting her to reappear. She didn't, but the feeling remained. A quiet sense that something had begun, something small but meaningful. Not fireworks. Not a grand declaration. Just a sentence spoken over a fence on an ordinary afternoon. I really hope you're not married.